Past teachers of present celebrities, famous people, what were they like? Here is the Ask Reddit from 2 years ago. For the lazy. David Bowie. There's one of David Bowie's reports in my old secondary school, which reads, David is a quiet student who needs to stop playing with his motorcycles and learn that music will not make him a livable wage. Adam Sandler. There was a science teacher in my high school who taught Adam Sandler. She was horrible, and one of his first recognized songs, I Hate MRS. K is all about her. Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio also didn't get along well with the other kids. Came in during lunch to eat with the teachers and faculty. Nicolas Cage. My grandmother was the secretary at a Beverly Hills high school when Nicolas Cage was attending. She said he was always late and often at the principal's office for goofing off. Apparently he dropped out of school for a bit. She also described him as charming in a Ferris Bueller sort of way. Lady Gaga. One of my professors taught Lady Gaga at NYU. She said Gaga used to stand up after class every day and tell everyone to come out and see the gigs she was playing in. Lady Gaga wasn't doing very well in the class, so my professor asked to meet with her. She told her that maybe if she focused more on her schoolwork and less on her gigs, she'd be more successful. Awkwardness. Rob McElhenney. The principal of my old high school taught Mac from Always Sunny while he was in high school. He said he was exactly how you would expect, a troublemaker and a smartass, but surprisingly he sucked at theater and school plays. One of my high school teachers had Kristen Bell in her class for a few years. She said that Kristen was a very bright student, always well liked, and she had a beautiful singing voice and was the lead in the school plays. One particular memory she had of Kristen was when she was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Surprisingly, it wasn't the main cast, but rather the Munchkins who stole the show, because they were the varsity football team walking on their knees through the auditorium. Kristen was supposed to sing at her wedding but had to cancel because she had just been hired for a job, which turned out to be Veronica Mars. Not a teacher, but a former supervisor of mine went to college with Fred Rogers. She said he was exactly the same guy as he was on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. My 4th grade math teacher also taught LeBron James. She said he was obsessed with basketball. When asked what he was going to be when he grew up, he said he was going to be in the NBA. When she told him he needed a backup plan, he just looked into her soul and said, "No, I'm going to be in the NBA." My mom taught Kanye West's music theory class in high school. She said he insisted he would one day be a famous rapper, and that he was a decent student but sometimes a bit stubborn. Overall not that noticeable. Although he did like freestyling, he and some other students threw a little baby shower for my mom while she was pregnant with my sister, which is nice. Bill Murray went to my high school way before me, but there is a story that I would like to believe is real. That he got the record for most amount of detentions, called jugs, for someone who graduated from the school, and when a kid broke it years later he took him out to lunch. My econ teacher taught Michael Phelps. He said that no one knew who Michael was before the Olympics. As soon as he came back though, whenever he was in school, he was really cocky and obnoxious. But since he rarely was in school, he didn't really have much experience with him after his freshman year. I've got a flip story. I was partially taught how to fish by Jimmy Carter. He was very encouraging to 8-year-old me. I'm an anthropology professor who taught Kate Beaton, the cartoonist who draws Hark a Vagrant. She was smart and funny, and very quiet. I try to use engaging learning activities in my classes, and that year asked students to do a drawing that depicted one of the key points in the assigned reading for that day. Her group did a 4-panel cartoon that was spot on and very funny. I kept it, and pull it out whenever I do that exercise now. She wasn't a past teacher of a celeb, but my AP bio teacher in high school went to the same school as Dennis Leary, and he asked her to their senior prom and she turned him down. He brought it up in an interview after he got famous and said that she was right for turning him down because he was a total dork in high school. My hairstylist was Mariah Carey's cosmetology teacher when she attended Bose's vocational school in Green Lawn, Huntington, New York. Said Mariah was a bit of a diva and was not terribly interested in learning the trade of hair and makeup. Wanted to sing instead. I guess that worked out. Well, the voice of Boots the monkey from Dora the Explorer goes to high school with some of my friends. Apparently he's extremely awkward and he's also not exactly the type of person this question was about. My mother's best friend taught Matthew McConaughey. She said he was one of her favorite students because he was so sweet. Apparently he came to see her and talked to her class when he first started acting. Seems pretty cool. My English teacher had John Travolta in his basketball team that he coached at the time. He said he was very annoying and he told him that he wouldn't make it anywhere in life. A friend's mom taught Patton Oswalt. Said he was mostly quiet, kept to himself and seemed like kind of a loner, but when he did speak it was comedy gold. He actually shouts out to the area he grew up in a lot of his material. His first 2 CDs basically have a couple minute rants about how Sterling sucks balls. And he spends like half of his book Zombie, Spaceship, Wasteland talking about how much Sugarland Run sucks. But he recently did an interview where he said, "I know what I said on my first 2 albums. But now I don't know." There's a Facebook group about Sterling, VAR, filled with a lot of people from my high school and people I grew up with and was friends with. Reading all of their memories of Sterling compared to my memories, I'm starting to suspect the thing that sucked about Sterling was me. It's interesting because I wonder if all the loners really just ducking hate where they are. My mom went to school with Trent Reznor. Said he was quiet, but when you actually got to know him he was a talking machine. My old English teacher taught Colleen Ballinger, aka Miranda Sings, and reported she was very quiet, full of teen angst, and not funny. A coworker of mine once punched Bon Jovi in the face when they were classmates in Sayreville High School. Not quite what you guys are looking for, but since this thread is barren I'll chime in. I went to elementary school with Grimes. She was pretty charismatic, but I get the feeling she was more of an introvert. If I recall correctly, she was an average student. Keep in mind that this was a private Catholic school in a very affluent neighborhood, so all of our parents had very high expectations for us academically. I don't know her parents that well, but her mom is a crown prosecutor and her dad is a professor, so I'm sure they expected her to be doing well. Her parents went through a messy divorce in either grade 5 or 6. Claire took it really hard. She'd always been artsy, but I think she got more into her art during this phase as she focused less on her academics. One thing that may surprise you is she wasn't musical at all in these days. Apparently she taught herself how to play the piano at around 16 or 17. But this is after I lost track of her. Our school had a decent music program, but she wasn't into it. We had an excellent visual arts program at the school and that was her jam. Drawing and painting. She liked drawing fashionable oil women. Yes, I can remember her drawing highly sexualized women in grade 5. She also loved animals, so she would paint them a lot. I think her dog's name was Toby and she liked to paint him. I think I remember her drawing and painting nature scenes from time to time. She also loved Barbie dolls. Finally something I can contribute to. It's not much I suppose, but I had Curtis Granderson in class when I taught high school. Really nice kid. Pretty funny and animated. Super personable. Just overall a likable kid. Really glad he found success. I hate when people do this, but still, I'm not a teacher, but my high school environmental sciences teacher had a wife who taught high school chemistry to Kane West. She said he was a very nice, smart, and respectful young man, which means both of them believe his behavior now is an act to get more people to talk about him. My dad went to middle school with Steve Jobs. He never had a class with Jobs, but he did hear stuff about him and saw him sometimes. My dad told me that Jobs really didn't have any friends and was bullied. Part of that was because he brought it on himself by being an asshole sometimes. But Jobs was just kinda awkward socially and maybe didn't know better. This was only for a year since Steve Jobs basically forced his parents to move so that he could go to a different school. Because other than the bullying, Jobs also claimed that there were a lot of trashy people there and that the teachers sucked. According to my dad, that was bullet. My dad said he felt bad for Steve Jobs at the time because he sort of got to know Jobs and Steve Jobs did not have a single thing about him that would lead anyone to see him having any kind of success. He was exactly the type of person to live in their parents' basement until they were 40. I guess something must have changed. Not exactly answering the question, but before my time at my high school, a yeshiva, Natasha Lyon, Orange is the New Black, Was in honors Talmud but got kicked out of school for dealing weed. I was in Stratford, Ontario and ran into someone who used to be Justin Bieber's nanny. From what I gathered, he was an entitled little it and always tried to impress girls by playing guitar and stuff. Not a teacher but a teacher at my school told us about how he taught TJ Miller. He said that whenever he sees a kid now that he thinks is funny, he compares them to TJ and realizes that they aren't as funny as TJ was. He said he was a very well liked kid and that he was obviously a class clown of sorts. If you watch High Music Video Denver, you can see my high school at the end when he starts doing our cheer with all the kids. He comes back to visit every once in a while. Great guy. I'm not a teacher, I know. Sorry, but I went to school with one of Night Shyamalan's daughters. She was nice. The popular but down to earth type. She wasn't arrogant or anything of that sort. And you wouldn't know she was the daughter of a celebrity when you talk to her. I've met Night Shyamalan before, and he was really polite, but Reddit seems to hold a disliking towards him. My AP Econ teacher said he was in the same fraternity as Will Ferrell, and apparently whenever they had a party he would disappear for a few minutes and then start streaking. He also said that once a professor gave him a bad grade on a test that would have caused him to retake the class, so he started streaking until the professor changed the grade. Not a teacher but my friend's older brother, let's call him A, was in high school with John Mayer. I guess he used to go to parties and bring his guitar and try to hit on chicks. Tried to pick up A's girlfriend and A punched him out. I deeply want to believe it's all true. My best friend's mom knew Kurt Cobain before he was famous. He would give her demo tapes to listen to, and she'd give them back to him because, she said, they were awful. She also gave Kurt money to take the city bus because he was a broke, starving artist with literally no money for the bus. At 8 hours old, I'm probably late to this thread and will get buried, but the vice principal of my middle school taught John Bon Jovi in high school. According to him, and this is a direct quote, "It's a good thing that boy could sing because he was dumber than a box of rocks." A close relative was the school nurse at Pharrell Williams High School. She said he would visit the nurse's office quite often, pretending to be sick so he could get out of class. She said he was very nice and creative, and wishes she could meet him in person again. This is very much from a different time, but my grandmother taught math at the prestigious George School in Pennsylvania for a few years while she was dating my grandfather before they got married. While there, she apparently taught Julian Bond, a future congressman and chairman of the NAACP, who she said was very respectful and hardworking. Her other famous student was Keir Dullea, star of 2001: A Space Odyssey and more. Apparently he was shy and struggled with math but persevered. My mom taught Michael Vick in 7th or 8th grade in the inner city. She describes him as being very quiet, somewhat shy, and focused on staying out of the trouble his peers were getting into. She taught more of his siblings and became friends with his mom and has always remained close with Michael and his family. She keeps in touch with a lot of her students. She's one of those teachers that actually cares. She was also on the board of directors for his non-profit before he got in trouble. Despite what he's most known for these days, he has always been a person who remained humble and gave back to his community. My grandma taught Bill Murray in elementary school way back in the 60s in suburban Chicago. She said he had always been a jokester. While I can't remember any specific stories off the top of my head at the moment, I do have this one. A couple of years ago they had the 50th reunion of that class from the small Catholic grammar school and Murray was filming a movie overseas at the time. Astonishingly, he actually got the invitation that was sent to him and he flew back to attend the reunion, and upon seeing my grandma he transformed into a completely different person. He came up to her and said as politely as he possibly could, "Hello MRS," and then proceeded to have a conversation with her. One of the biggest stars in the world was still intimidated by his grade school teacher. 50 years later. Mike Comby went to my high school and is very good friends with my previous algebra teacher. Apparently he was a very likable person and did well in her class. When he comes back to town they usually go out to lunch or something like that, which is pretty cool. Side note, my current boss also played with Mike in high school and they are still really good friends to this day. He told me he helped Mike work on his $4.4 million home last year. I went to school with a girl that Drake samples in one dance. Was pretty weird that Drake heard a barely known song by a girl living in our itty little English town and took it and made it into a #1. Never spoken to her, but her life has taken a new, random turning, which is good to see. Went to school with a girl who Rihanna used to babysit in Barbados. She said Rihanna was really sweet to all the kids. Not very interesting, but my 10th grade history teacher taught Julia Roberts and her brother Eric. I can't remember what he said about Julia, but apparently Eric is pigeon-toed and that's probably the reason why he's mainly seen from the waist up in his movies. I went to school with a few too many girls who were in adult films. I graduated over a decade ago, so not sure if that is a common occurrence now or what. One of my high school teachers went to high school with Jason Sudeikis and apparently they still hang out. He said Jason was a generally cool dude, funny and well liked but generally under the radar. For reference, Paul Rudd went to the same high school and is essentially the school's golden boy, while Sudeikis is liked, but much less acknowledged. I also had a professor in college who briefly taught with David Foster Wallace. My professor is a very polite British woman who doesn't like to talk bad about people, so she didn't talk about him much. You all should check out the graphic novel, My Friend Dharma. My uncle taught remedial English at Overbrook High in Phila for a while. He said he had one student who was really clever and would write poems in the margins of his notebooks all the time. My uncle would eventually take him aside and tell him he's too smart for remedial level, and bumped him up, specifically noting his poems. The kid wound up making an album soon after with some of those poems on there. He also had a TV show for a while. It was Will Smith. Not a teacher, but was a classmate of Christina Hendricks in high school. In fact, I had a girlfriend who cheated on me, and the next time I saw her, I was hanging with Christina at a local diner. If I had access to a time machine at any point in my life, I'm totally going back to that moment and giving a more thorough introduction. Break my heart, will ya? May I introduce you to the future most incredible woman in the universe? I'd still leave out the part about being completely in the friend zone, though. My grandmother was Prince's high school guidance counselor. Said he was a quiet and sweet kid, but that his mother was pretty weird. My softball coach in high school had taught Marilyn Manson's psychology class at coach's previous position, a different school. He said he was soft-spoken, very smart, and kind of weird. My 9th grade English teacher had Eliza Dushku unequipped. She was a douche-coo. Oh, I've got one. When my mother was in school she had a teacher. This was a while ago, of course, but she just told me this story. Anyways, this was a history teacher, and my mom said the teacher said these words, not exact, Bruce Springsteen. I told him that he needs to stop playing guitar and start studying history. This was before he was really famous and when he more so just played at a local bar or something. Not a huge fan of him, but I just find it a funny story. My dad was in the year below Stephen Fry in college. He says he was the funniest man he'd ever met. Also really insightful and deep, apparently. Know a friend who went to school with Lewis Hamilton, British Formula 1 racing driver. Supposedly an alright guy but hung around with a lot of D's. His status of already being an up and coming racing driver, usually most people are picked out to be racers in their teens. He would get away with some much it. I assume it's because the school wants to leave a positive mark on students who are going to world famous so it helps them in the future. One of my teachers went to school with Damon Albarn, lead singer of Blur and Gorillaz for anyone who doesn't know, when they were kids. Apparently he picked on her a lot because her mother was a teacher at the school, and once he scribbled over her work, proudly exclaiming, "Hand that in." My old stats teacher once taught at the school the Red Hot Chili Peppers went to. Said they were alright kids but unruly. I had a professor in college who directed Robin Williams back before he got famous in the early to mid 70s. He was the musical director for a production of The Music Man. Apparently Robin was constantly making jokes, improvising, and generally being hilarious. My professor said he had a hard time being mad because every damn thing he said was hilarious, and this man, while not humorless, is definitely not someone who outwardly shows it. Eventually, so much time had been wasted that he had to stop and yell. Also something he doesn't do. Hey man. Cut the crap. Apparently, Robin got right into character. Did his part quite well, and after he finished his part, my professor looked at him and said thank you. Continue. And then, like a switch had been flipped, he went back to being wild, zany, and hilarious. My teacher taught Magic Johnson at MSU. Said he was polite and nice. Charismatic guy but only showed up the first and last day lol. Still shook his hand at the end though.